In a twist of fate that would change two women's lives forever, a wealthy business mogul decided to switch places with her housekeeper for a day. What the housekeeper accomplished in her stead would leave her utterly astonished. The harsh ring of an alarm clock shattered the silence of a small apartment in a town, yanking Isabella Jones from her restless dreams. Her tired blue eyes, marked by dark circles, opened reluctantly to face another day. As she sat up in bed, her gaze fell on the stack of medical bills piled high on her nightstand. Isabella felt her chest tighten with worry as she let out a deep sigh. "How am I ever going to pay all of Mom's medical bills?" she whispered to herself. "I should have studied harder, found a better job, worked more overtime." Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of coughing from the next room. Isabella rushed out of bed, knowing her mother needed her morning medication. In the cramped kitchen, Isabella prepared strong coffee while mentally organizing her day's schedule. The bitter aroma of coffee filled the air, mixing with the musty smell that seemed permanently embedded in the old building. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the cup, revealing the exhaustion from countless sleepless nights and endless days of work. "I have to clean Mrs. Brown's penthouse today," she reminded herself. "If I do an exceptional job, maybe she'll leave an extra tip. Dear Lord, please let her be in a good mood today." Isabella closed her eyes, allowing herself a moment of vulnerability before putting on her mask of strength again. She quietly entered her mother's room carrying a tray with coffee and medication. Her mother's pale, wrinkled face brightened with a weak smile at the sight of her. "Good morning, Isabella," Mrs. Jones whispered in her illness-ravaged voice. Isabella sat on the edge of the bed, helping her mother sit up. "How are you feeling today, Mom?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady while helping with breakfast. Isabella fought against waves of guilt and helplessness threatening to overwhelm her. Her eyes scanned the modest room, settling on a faded photograph hanging on the peeling wall. One picture in particular caught her attention. She and her mother smiling in front of their family flower shop, before the illness, before the debt. Isabella swallowed hard, forcing herself to smile at her mother. "Remember that day, Mom? When we won the neighborhood's Best Floral Arrangement Award?" Isabella asked. Her mother nodded, eyes sparkling with the memory. "Of course I do, honey. Those were happy times. Don't worry, though. Good days will come again. I believe that." Isabella squeezed her mother's hand, wishing she could share her optimism. Suddenly, the sharp ring of the phone startled Isabella. Her heart pounding with an inexplicable sense of dread, she rushed to answer it. The voice on the other end was clinical and detached, but its words hit Isabella like a punch to the stomach. "Ms. Jones, this is the hospital. We need you to come in urgently. We have your mother's test results. It would be better to discuss them in person." Isabella felt the world spinning, her legs trembling beneath her. "What's wrong? Please tell me," she pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. The nurse hesitated before responding. "Your mother needs surgery, Ms. Jones. It's essential, but the costs will be substantial. We wanted to discuss the financial arrangements with you." The words echoed in Isabella's mind, mixing with her frantic thoughts. "How will I pay for this? What am I going to do? Oh God, I can't lose Mom," she thought, glancing toward the room where her mother rested. Isabella closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and made her decision. "I'll be there within the hour," she said firmly before hanging up the phone. Though she didn't know how, she was determined to find a solution. She had to. Across town on the Upper East Side, the morning sun streamed through the enormous windows of the Brown mansion, bathing the luxurious breakfast room in golden light. Tiffany Brown sat at her marble table, perfectly poised in her silk robe. The blue light from her tablet cast a pale glow on her face. Her fingers scrolled through headline after headline about her cosmetics company, each piece of bad news hitting her like a physical blow. Sales plummet, animal testing scandal, stock price in free fall. Tiffany closed her eyes briefly and took a deep breath. How did it come to this? She whispered to herself. I built this empire with my own hands. She picked up her coffee cup, its strong aroma a stark contrast to the bitter taste in her mouth. Looking out the window, she saw her meticulously maintained garden. Everything looked perfect on the surface. Such a contrast to the chaos unfolding in her business. Her phone vibrated with a message from her assistant, reminding her of the upcoming board meeting. Tiffany felt a wave of anxiety course through her body. They'll be gunning for my position at that meeting, she thought. But I won't give up without a fight. This company is my life. Her thoughts were interrupted by footsteps. Isabella, her housekeeper, quietly entered the room carrying a tray of fresh fruit. She hesitated for a moment after placing the tray on the table, observing her employer with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Finally, Tiffany looked up, meeting Isabella's eyes. Is everything all right? Isabella asked gently. You seem troubled. It's nothing you need to worry about, Isabella. Just business, Tiffany replied, her voice softer than usual. At that moment, a sharp ping sounded from Tiffany's tablet. Recognizing the board committee's email address, she frowned. With growing unease, Tiffany opened the message and quickly scanned its contents. As she read, the color drained from her face. The committee was considering removing her as CEO of the very company she had founded. The words seemed to leap off the screen, each one feeling like a dagger to her heart. They won't push me out, Tiffany whispered, her voice trembling with anger and fear. This company is my life, my legacy. I won't let them take it without a fight. Her hands trembled, causing the tablet to clatter onto the table, the sound echoing in the quiet room. She closed her eyes and took deep breaths, trying to calm her racing heart. Isabella remained standing there, watching her employer with growing concern. The heavy silence was broken by the sound of Tiffany suddenly pushing back her chair and standing up. Her heels clicked against the marble floor as she walked to the window. Isabella hesitated, unsure whether to leave or offer comfort. Isabella, have you ever felt like your whole world was crumbling around you? Tiffany asked in a surprisingly calm voice. Isabella swallowed hard, taken aback by this personal question. Actually, Mrs. Brown. I feel that way almost every day, she admitted quietly. Tiffany turned to face Isabella, studying her intently. Tell me about it, she requested gently. Caught off guard, Isabella hesitantly began sharing about her sick mother, the mounting medical bills, and her fear of not being able to afford the necessary treatments. Her words tumbled out faster and faster, like a dam breaking. Tiffany listened carefully, her expression softening with each word. It feels like I'm always running but never getting anywhere, Isabella concluded, her voice trembling. Sometimes I think if I just had a little more money, everything would be different. Tiffany nodded slowly, a sad smile playing on her lips. You know, sometimes I think my life would be so much easier if I had a simpler job, without the weight of this company on my shoulders. The two women looked at each other, sharing a moment of mutual understanding. Tiffany returned to the table and picked up an apple from the tray Isabella had brought. She turned it over in her hands, lost in thought. Isn't it funny, she murmured. We always think someone else's life must be better than our own. Isabella nodded silently, looking down at her clasped hands. Mrs. Brown, may I ask, what was in that email? What's happening? Isabella asked hesitantly. Tiffany let out a deep sigh. The board is trying to remove me as CEO. They're trying to take away the company I built with my own blood, sweat, and tears. Silence fell over the room again as both women sank into their thoughts. Tiffany absently bit into the apple, staring into the distance. Suddenly, she straightened up, a spark lighting in her eyes. Isabella watched with curiosity as Tiffany began pacing, muttering to herself. Isabella, what if I told you I had an idea? An idea that might solve both our problems? Tiffany suddenly turned to face her, eyes intense. Isabella blinked in surprise. What kind of idea? Tiffany smiled. A gesture filled with both excitement and a hint of nervousness. A crazy idea, Isabella. An idea that could change everything. I have a proposition for you, one that might seem completely absurd, she said, her eyes gleaming with barely contained excitement. Isabella felt her heart begin to race. Hope and anxiety swelled in her chest. Tiffany stepped forward and spoke in a low, strong voice. She gestured for Isabella to follow her to her office. It was an imposing room with elegant furniture and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. As they walked, Isabella could feel her heart pounding. A mixture of curiosity and fear gripped her. Tiffany closed the door and turned to face Isabella. Her eyes were shining with an intensity Isabella had never seen before. Isabella, what I'm about to propose might sound crazy, but please hear me out, Tiffany began, her voice steady despite a hint of nervousness. I suggest we switch lives for 24 hours. You'll take my place at the company, and I'll experience your daily responsibilities and routine. Isabella stood there with her mouth open, her eyes wide with disbelief. Mrs. Brown, that's impossible. How could I possibly run a company? I know nothing about business management. Tiffany smiled. A mixture of confidence and quiet desperation. You know more than you think, Isabella. Over the years, you've observed and learned so much. Tiffany began pacing the office, quickly explaining her idea. She detailed how Isabella's unique perspective could address the company's problems, and how she herself could gain a new understanding of her employees' daily struggles. Isabella stood there dumbfounded, trying to make sense of this outlandish proposal. Her eyes wandered around the luxurious surroundings that seemed worlds apart from her reality. But Mrs. Brown, what if I make a mistake? What if I ruin everything? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Tiffany stopped pacing and looked directly into Isabella's eyes. I believe in you, Isabella. More than that, I believe your unique perspective is exactly what this company needs right now. Tiffany then mentioned the substantial compensation Isabella would receive for participating in this unusual experiment. Isabella's eyes widened at the amount. Her mind immediately calculated how much of her mother's medical bills it could cover. She felt a wave of hope mixed with numbing fear at the responsibility she was about to take on. It's a significant sum, Isabella. Enough to cover your mother's medical bills, and then some, Tiffany said gently, noticing Isabella's reaction. Isabella swallowed hard. Her mind was in turmoil. I don't know what to say, Mrs. Brown. This is such an unexpected proposal. Silence fell over the office as Isabella contemplated the offer. Tiffany waited patiently, her eyes never leaving Isabella's face. Finally, Isabella took a deep breath and slowly nodded. I'll do it, Mrs. Brown, she said in a steady voice despite her trembling hands. Tiffany broke into a broad smile, visible relief washing over her face. Wonderful, Isabella. Don't worry. I'll give you all the guidance you need, she exclaimed with renewed energy. She quickly moved to her desk and began scanning through her planner. Suddenly, she stopped, her face turning slightly pale. Oh, I forgot to mention something. Isabella felt a knot forming in her stomach. What is it? Tiffany looked at Isabella apologetically. There's an important board meeting today. You'll need to attend it in my place. Isabella felt the blood drain from her face. A board meeting? I wouldn't know how to conduct myself at such an important meeting. Tiffany placed a comforting hand on Isabella's shoulder. Stay calm, Isabella. I'll give you all the information you need. Besides, your unique perspective might be exactly what we need to face the board. Isabella took a deep breath, trying to control her mounting panic. Believe in yourself, Isabella, Tiffany said firmly. You're more capable than you think. Now, let's go to my closet. We need to make you look and feel like an executive. With that, Tiffany led Isabella from the office to her walk-in closet, ready to begin the transformation. Isabella followed, her heart pounding, unsure whether she was making the biggest mistake of her life or embarking on the greatest adventure she'd ever experienced. She hesitantly entered Tiffany's luxurious closet, her eyes scanning rows of expensive clothes and sophisticated accessories. Tiffany began searching through hangers and drawers, pulling out what she deemed appropriate attire for a board meeting. Isabella felt completely out of place, her palms sweating as she touched fabrics more expensive than anything she'd ever dreamed of wearing. Try this on. Remember, Isabella, in this world, appearance tells half the story. Be confident, Tiffany said, handing her a perfectly tailored suit. Isabella nodded nervously, muttering to herself, confidence, right. If only I could find some. While Isabella changed behind the screen, Tiffany rapid-fired instructions about the company. She covered the board's recent decisions, ongoing projects, and expectations for the next quarter. Isabella tried to absorb everything, her mind desperately trying to memorize each detail. She emerged from behind the screen, awkwardly adjusting her blazer. Remember, Isabella. You're my personal representative. Keep your back straight, maintain eye contact. Don't let them intimidate you, Tiffany instructed, helping adjust Isabella's collar. Isabella swallowed hard. Her voice trembled slightly. But what if they ask questions I can't answer, Mrs. Brown? Tiffany picked up a pair of high heels and handed them to Isabella. If you don't know something, don't make it up. Tell them you'll check and get back to them. Show willingness to learn, but don't be too submissive. Isabella put on the shoes, nearly twisting her ankle at the height of the heels. Now, about the meeting agenda. The main focus will be our new sustainable product line. We need to emphasize our commitment to innovation and environmental responsibility, Tiffany continued, pulling out a leather folder from the side table. Isabella nodded worriedly, her eyes wide. Sustainability, innovation, responsibility. Got it. But what if they ask about specific numbers? Before Tiffany could answer, a hurried knock at the door interrupted them. Tiffany's assistant, a young man in an impeccable suit, burst in with a pale, worried face. He stopped short at the sight of Isabella dressed as an executive but quickly recovered his composure. Mrs. Brown, we have a situation. There's a corporate scandal brewing. The media is already picking up the story, he said in a tense voice. Tiffany visibly paled, exchanging worried glances with Isabella. What kind of scandal? The assistant hesitated, looking nervously at Isabella. Tiffany waved her hand impatiently. She can hear this. What's happening? The young man took a deep breath before continuing. There are allegations that animal testing is being conducted for our new product line. If this leaks, it could destroy our reputation and derail the launch of our sustainable line. Isabella felt anxiety swelling in her chest. She looked at Tiffany, hoping to see some CEO-like composure, but saw only shock and worry in her eyes. The closet, which moments ago had been a symbol of luxury and power, suddenly felt suffocating. Oh God, what have I gotten myself into? Isabella thought, her heart pounding wildly. Tiffany turned to her, voice shaking but determined. Isabella, it seems your first task as my representative has become more complicated than we imagined. Hours later, Tiffany adjusted the worn strap of Isabella's bag, feeling strange in the simple clothes she'd chosen to play the role of housekeeper. She paused momentarily at the mansion's door, looking back at the luxurious life she was about to leave behind. The confused driver waited patiently beside Isabella's compact car, puzzled by this unusual situation. Remember, Tiffany. You're stepping into Isabella's shoes. Do your best, just as she would, she reminded herself. Taking a deep breath, she turned and walked toward the car, her bearing still betraying her privileged upbringing. The drive to the neighboring district was an eye-opening experience for Tiffany. As the car moved through increasingly narrow streets into a modest neighborhood, she absorbed a reality she rarely saw up close through the window. Run-down buildings, cracked sidewalks, people hurrying past with tired expressions, everything painted a picture entirely different from the life she knew. How does Isabella manage this life every day? Tiffany wondered, feeling a new understanding for her housekeeper. "Ma'am, we've arrived," the driver said, pulling her from her thoughts. Tiffany stepped out of the car and stared at the weathered building before her. She hesitated before entering, feeling the weight of her responsibility. In the cramped, noisy elevator, Tiffany rehearsed her introduction to Isabella's mother. "I'm Isabella's friend," she repeated quietly to herself. The elevator shuddered to a stop, and Tiffany took a deep breath before stepping out. Standing before Isabella's apartment door, Tiffany felt nervous. The key made a loud sound in the quiet hallway as she inserted it into the lock. Opening the door, she found a small but clean and tidy apartment, modest but well-maintained. The contrast with her mansion was stark, and Tiffany felt guilty for never truly considering Isabella's living conditions before. "Isabella, is that you?" a weak voice called from inside. Tiffany froze for a moment, then forced herself to respond. "No, ma'am. I'm Isabella's friend. She asked me to help today." Tiffany walked hesitantly toward the bedroom, feeling her heartbeat quicken with each step. Though she knew this would be her first experience caring for someone ill, she was determined to do her best for Isabella and her mother. Entering the room, she was shocked by the sight of Isabella's frail mother, connected to various medical devices. "Oh God, what do I do?" Tiffany thought, feeling completely out of her depth. At that moment, Isabella's mother began coughing violently, her body shaking with the effort. Tiffany stood frozen, panic rising in her chest as she realized she had no idea how to handle a medical emergency. Meanwhile, in Manhattan's Upper East Side, Isabella nervously adjusted her borrowed blazer as she rode the elevator to the boardroom floor. Her heart was pounding against her ribs, and she struggled to steady her breathing. As the doors opened, she stepped into an elegant hallway adorned with photographs of the company's products. Isabella moved forward, her high heels clicking against the marble floor. She paused before the double doors of the boardroom, taking a deep breath before entering. "You can do this, Isabella. Do it for Mom," she whispered to herself. As she entered, silence fell over the room. All eyes turned to her. The board members, men and women in expensive suits, stared at her with a mixture of surprise and skepticism. Isabella walked toward Tiffany's chair at the head of the table, each step feeling heavier than the last. She placed her folder on the table and straightened her posture, remembering Tiffany's instructions about confidence and bearing. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Isabella Jones, here today as Mrs. Brown's representative," she began, her voice steadier than she expected. A murmur of confusion rippled through the room. "Where's Tiffany?" a middle-aged man across the table demanded suddenly. Isabella took a deep breath, preparing for the battle ahead. She began explaining the situation, omitting personal details but emphasizing that Tiffany had specifically chosen her for this task. As she spoke, Isabella noticed the board members' skeptical expressions and the glances they exchanged. She knew she needed to establish her credibility quickly. I understand this is an unusual situation, but I believe my unique perspective can bring fresh insights to the challenges our company faces, Isabella said, her voice growing more confident. And what perspective would that be? Asked a gray-haired woman with an almost sarcastic tone. Isabella decided to change tactics. Instead of trying to imitate Tiffany, she chose to be honest about her position. As someone who has worked alongside Mrs. Brown for years as an employee, I see operations differently. I see not just the numbers, but the people behind them. She began discussing employee concerns, inefficiencies she'd noticed, and opportunities for improvement she'd identified. To her surprise, several board members began leaning forward with interest. Interesting. I'd never thought about it that way, a young man murmured. Isabella felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe I really can bring something new to this discussion, she thought. The meeting progressed, and Isabella skillfully handled the topics Tiffany had briefly explained to her. When she didn't know something, she said so honestly and promised to find the information. Her candor and unique perspective seemed to be capturing the attention of some board members. However, she could also feel hostility from others, particularly the man who had first questioned Tiffany's absence. Ms. Jones, could you explain exactly why Mrs. Brown thought it appropriate to send a proxy to such an important meeting? He interrupted suddenly during a discussion about the new product line. His tone made his opinion of the decision crystal clear. Isabella felt all eyes turn to her, and the tension in the room was palpable. She knew her response could make or break her credibility with the board. A moment of silence stretched as she carefully considered her next words. Mrs. Brown believes that sometimes we need a different perspective to see solutions right in front of us, Isabella began, choosing her words carefully. She paused, gathering courage for her next statement. And given the company's current situation, perhaps an unconventional approach is exactly what we need. The silence that followed her words was deafening. She could feel the weight of every gaze upon her. Some faces showed surprise, others clear offense. The man who had questioned her slowly rose to his feet, his face red with anger. How dare you? You have no idea of the challenges we face here. If Isabella felt her heart rate accelerate but maintained her composure. With all due respect, Mr. Chairman, I do understand these challenges. Isabella began detailing the problems she'd observed over the years. Though her voice trembled slightly, her words were clear and precise. While I may not understand all the financial aspects, I do understand the people who keep this company running day after day. And I believe that's equally valuable, Isabella admitted. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room, surprising both Isabella and the man who had challenged her. The meeting continued, with Isabella answering questions and proposing ideas that neither Tiffany nor the board members had considered. She discussed the possibility of a more affordable product line, arguing it would not only expand their customer base but enhance the company's image. When asked about numbers, Isabella was honest about her lack of detailed knowledge but offered to work with the finance team to develop realistic projections. What we're doing here isn't just selling cosmetics. We're selling confidence and self-esteem. And that should be accessible to everyone, not just a select few, Isabella said, feeling her confidence grow. She noticed several board members, even those who had seemed skeptical at first, nodding thoughtfully. As the meeting drew to a close, Isabella could feel the shift in the room's atmosphere. The initial skepticism had transformed into careful respect and even curiosity. She hadn't just survived the meeting, she'd brought new ideas to the company. When the board chairman declared the meeting adjourned, Isabella let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Ms. Jones, your ideas are intriguing. Perhaps Mrs. Brown knew exactly what she was doing when she sent you today," the chairman said with a slight smile. Isabella smiled back, feeling a wave of pride. "Thank you. I hope I've made some contribution." As board members filed out, Isabella began gathering her papers with hands still slightly shaking from adrenaline. Then she noticed the man who had first challenged her approaching. His expression was serious but no longer hostile. "Ms. Jones," he said, "I must admit I underestimated you. Your ideas are interesting. However, I'm still curious about why Tiffany really sent you. What's her game here?" he asked in a low voice, his eyes narrowing. Isabella felt a chill run down her spine. She knew she'd handled the meeting well, but this man clearly suspected there was more to the story. And he wasn't wrong. "Mr. Chairman, I assure you there's no game. Mrs. Brown simply wants to hear all voices within the company," Isabella replied, working to keep her voice steady. The man studied her for a long moment before slowly nodding. "We'll leave it at that," he muttered before turning on his heel and leaving the room. Isabella found herself alone in the boardroom, her heart still racing. She had not only survived the meeting but had even managed to impress some board members. Yet she now faced a new challenge, maintaining this charade and dealing with growing suspicions. As she left the room, she couldn't help wondering how Tiffany would react to what had transpired here today, and how she would explain everything. Meanwhile, in Queens, Tiffany was facing her own crisis as Isabella's mother's coughing grew worse. Without hesitation, she rushed to the bedside, supporting the elderly woman and trying to calm her. "Try to breathe slowly, just take it easy," Tiffany pleaded, her voice shaking. But the situation only deteriorated. Mrs. Jones's face grew increasingly pale, and Tiffany could see she was struggling to breathe. In that instant, Tiffany realized they needed professional help immediately. "Hold on just a little longer. I'm calling an ambulance," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Dear God, how does Isabella handle this every day? The next few minutes were a whirlwind of activity. Paramedics rushed into the small apartment, firing rapid questions that Tiffany could barely answer. She stumbled over questions about medications and medical history, acutely aware of how little she knew about Isabella's mother's condition. As the paramedics began moving Mrs. Jones onto a stretcher, Tiffany felt a wave of guilt for never having asked more about Isabella's life over the years. "Can I ride with her?" Tiffany asked pleadingly. One of the paramedics gave a quick nod. "Yes, but we need to leave now." The ride to Metropolitan Hospital was surreal for Tiffany. The inside of the ambulance, with its equipment and monitoring devices, was a completely foreign world to her. She held Mrs. Jones's hand, whispering words of comfort that sounded hollow even to her own ears. Upon arrival at the Tiffany was suddenly separated from the patient and left alone in the crowded, noisy waiting room. "Please fill out these forms," a tired-looking nurse said, handing Tiffany a clipboard full of paperwork. Staring at the forms filled with questions, Tiffany felt completely lost. How do I explain that I know nothing about the patient? These hours became a lesson in humility for Tiffany. She faced endless lines of patients, confusing paperwork, and overworked hospital staff. Each passing minute made her feel more helpless and frustrated. When she finally got to speak with a doctor, the news wasn't good. "The patient needs the latest treatment available. It's expensive and not covered by insurance," the doctor explained gravely. Tiffany felt her heart sink. "How much will it cost?" The doctor quoted a figure that made Tiffany's throat tighten. Under normal circumstances, the amount wouldn't have been an issue for her, but she remembered she had given all her credit cards to Isabella. Desperately, Tiffany pulled out her phone to call Isabella, but the call went straight to voicemail. She must be in the board meeting. What am I supposed to do? Tiffany thought, feeling panic rise again. Just then, a nurse hurried over. Her condition is deteriorating. We need a decision quickly. Tiffany looked from the doctor to the nurse, feeling crushed by the weight of responsibility. Unable to reach Isabella, she literally held a woman's life in her hands. Though she'd been a powerful CEO ruling over her company for years, Tiffany Brown now felt completely helpless. Just give me a moment, she whispered. Tiffany closed her eyes briefly, trying to calm her racing mind. When she opened them again, there was fierce determination in her gaze. Start the treatment. I'll take responsibility for the costs, she said firmly. The doctor and nurse exchanged hesitant glances, but Tiffany continued. I know my decision might seem inappropriate, but I promise you, I have the means to pay. Please, save her. Meanwhile, Isabella barely had time to catch her breath before being informed about an emergency interview. The cosmetics company headquarters was in chaos. Employees rushed back and forth, phones ringing non-stop. Isabella was quickly ushered into a conference room where a team of journalists was already waiting. Remember, be firm but show empathy. This is crisis management, the PR advisor whispered while adjusting her microphone. Isabella nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Tiffany trusted me. I can't let her down now. Under the glare of the lights, Isabella faced the stern-faced journalist. Live from Brown Cosmetics, we're speaking with Isabella Jones, the journalist began. Ms. Jones, how will your company respond to today's allegations about animal testing? Isabella felt all eyes in the room fixed on her, waiting for her response. Our company has always operated under strict ethical principles, Isabella began in a surprisingly steady voice. We take these allegations very seriously and are conducting a thorough internal investigation. The journalist was relentless. But according to inside sources, senior management was already aware of these tests. How do you explain that? Isabella felt a wave of panic but forced herself to stay calm. She recalled her experiences within the company and the conversations she'd heard over the years. Having worked closely with the board for years, I can state definitively that they were never aware of such practices. Our employees are committed to ethics and sustainability. An interesting response, the journalist commented. But it raises another question, why isn't Mrs. Brown here herself to address these allegations directly? Isabella swallowed hard, remembering Tiffany's delicate situation. Mrs. Brown is dealing with an urgent personal matter. She has entrusted this situation to her team, confident we will handle it with transparency and integrity. The interview continued, with Isabella skillfully navigating the questions. When the journalist seemed to run out of questions, Isabella began to relax slightly. Maybe I'm handling this better than I thought, she mused with a small smile. But her relief was short-lived. The journalist fixed her with a steady gaze and said, one final question, Ms. Jones. How does Mrs. Brown explain the 2010 incident when her previous company faced similar allegations of unethical practices? Isabella felt the blood drain from her face. She had no idea what the journalist was talking about. Her mind raced desperately, searching for any information about Tiffany's past she might have heard, but came up empty. The silence in the room grew oppressive. Everyone was waiting for her answer. Oh God, how do I get out of this? Isabella thought, feeling panic rise. The journalist smiled, knowing he had cornered his interviewee. Well, Ms. Jones? The viewers are waiting for your response. Isabella felt as if time had stopped. Her mind was working frantically. She knew her answer could affect not just this interview but the company's entire reputation. Taking a deep breath, she chose honesty. To be completely honest, Isabella began, her voice trembling slightly. I'm not familiar with the incident you're referring to. As Mrs. Brown's representative, my focus is on our company's present and future practices, not past events I can neither confirm nor deny. The journalist frowned. What I can say with certainty is that we are committed to complete transparency going forward. We plan to invite journalists, activists, and regulators to visit our facilities and see our processes firsthand. With that, the journalist ended the interview. Isabella wasn't sure how her response had been received. As she left the conference room, her heart jumped at seeing missed calls from Tiffany. I hope she's calling to check how things went, not because something's happened to Mom, she thought. At that time, Tiffany left the hospital exhausted and emotionally drained. Isabella's mother was stable, but the fear and helplessness she'd felt during the crisis still lingered in her body. Looking at her watch, she realized she was running late for Isabella's next job, cleaning another wealthy client's home. With no time to change clothes or properly groom herself, Tiffany climbed into a taxi. How does Isabella manage this every day? Well, I just have to get through it, Tiffany told herself. She could feel every muscle in her body protesting. Arriving at the mansion, Tiffany hesitated before ringing the doorbell. An elegant middle-aged woman opened the door. She frowned immediately upon seeing Tiffany. Well, you're not Isabella, the woman said suspiciously. Tiffany swallowed hard and forced a smile. Yes, ma'am. I'm Tiffany, Isabella's colleague. She had an emergency, so I'm filling in for her. The answer came more easily than she'd expected. However, the woman's expression made it clear she wasn't entirely convinced. Well, I suppose that will have to do. Come in, the woman said reluctantly. I have lots of work for you to do, and you're already late by my usual schedule. Tiffany nodded. If I can run a major corporation, surely I can handle housekeeping, she told herself. But reality proved quite different from what Tiffany had imagined. She struggled with the vacuum cleaner, became confused by various cleaning supplies, and was completely lost about the proper order of tasks. The client watched her like a hawk, making critical comments every few minutes. Isabella never leaves streaks on the mirrors, and Isabella always knows exactly how to arrange the cushions. Tiffany felt sweat running down her back, a mixture of physical exertion and mounting anxiety. How does Isabella maintain her composure under this constant scrutiny? Tiffany wondered, trying not to show her irritation. Time crawled by agonizingly slowly, and Tiffany felt every muscle in her body protesting the unfamiliar work. She knocked over an empty vase, accidentally mixed colored clothes with whites in the laundry, and nearly broke what looked like a ridiculously expensive ornament. With each mistake, the client's gaze grew colder and more suspicious. Tiffany, the woman finally said sharply. I'm beginning to doubt you really work with Isabella. Your incompetence is shocking. Tiffany felt panic rising. Ma'am, I know I'm a beginner, but I'm really trying my best. The client crossed her arms and fixed her with a sharp stare. Clearly, you're not up to the task. I think I'll call your employer to verify. Isabella has never disappointed me like this. She picked up the phone, her finger hovering over the buttons. Tiffany felt her heart rate accelerate, knowing her charade was about to be exposed. Please, wait, Tiffany pleaded desperately. Her mind worked frantically to find a way out. But the employer had already started dialing. Tiffany knew she had only seconds before her disguise would completely unravel. Feeling desperation mounting, Tiffany decided to play her last card. With a trembling voice but determined spirit, she said, Please, ma'am. The truth is, Isabella's mother is in the hospital in critical condition. She didn't want to disappoint you, so she asked me to come. As her friend, I couldn't refuse. I know I'm not as capable as Isabella, but I'm truly doing my best. If you could just be a little patient. As her heart pounded wildly, she watched the client's expression soften slightly. Isabella always speaks so highly of you, says you're understanding and kind. Please don't let her down. The client hesitated. The phone was still in her hand, but she slowly put down the receiver. All right, she finally said in a softer voice. I'll give you another chance. But I expect significant improvement. Understood? Tiffany nodded vigorously, feeling relief wash over her. Thank you, ma'am. I'll do my very best. As she picked up the cleaning supplies again, Tiffany silently vowed to praise Isabella's patience when this was all over. I'll never take housekeeping for granted again, she thought. Isabella arrived at Tiffany's mansion with a heavy heart, physically and mentally exhausted after an intense day. Inside, she found Tiffany sitting on the sofa in the main living room, looking equally worn out. The two women stared at each other for a moment, the silence heavy with tension and expectation. Finally, Tiffany broke the silence with a weary voice. Isabella. I don't even know where to begin. Isabella slowly approached and sat in the chair opposite her. Start at the beginning, Mrs. Brown. How's my mother? Your mother is stable now, Isabella, Tiffany answered with obvious guilt. But it was touch and go for a while. I had no idea things were this serious. Isabella nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. Thank you for taking care of her. If you hadn't been there. Tiffany suddenly stood and walked to the window. Isabella, I completely underestimated your life, your work, everything. The way you manage such demanding responsibilities every day. It's truly remarkable. She turned back, looking at Isabella with new understanding. So, how did you fare in my role? Isabella took a deep breath, collecting her thoughts. It was challenging, Mrs. Brown. The board meeting, the interview. I might have done some things you wouldn't approve of. Like what? Tiffany asked tensely. Isabella detailed the day's events, including her promises of transparency during the interview. As she spoke, she watched Tiffany's expression shift between surprise, concern, and admiration. Isabella, you may have saved the company today, Tiffany finally said, her voice slightly trembling. Your honest, straightforward approach was exactly what we needed in this crisis. Isabella felt a mixture of relief and pride. But it was quickly replaced by concern. But what about the animal testing, Mrs. Brown? Were those allegations true? Tiffany looked away, obvious guilt written across her face. I honestly didn't know, Isabella. I swear I didn't. The silence that followed was heavy. Both women were lost in their thoughts. Finally, Isabella spoke in a firm voice. Then we need to do the right thing now. I think we should follow through on the promises I made. Tiffany nodded slowly, a new determination lighting up her eyes. You're right. We'll do this together, Isabella. Your perspective is exactly what this company needs. While they were discussing next steps, Tiffany's phone rang. She answered it, her expression quickly shifting to a mixture of surprise and concern. After a brief conversation, she hung up and turned to Isabella with an incredulous look. That was my assistant. Apparently, your statements about transparency and social responsibility have caused our stock price to rise. Investors are optimistic about the company's new direction. Isabella blinked in surprise. That's good news, isn't it? Tiffany nodded slowly. Yes, but it also means we have to follow through on every promise you made. And there's something else. I got a call from your regular client. She wants to hire Tiffany as her regular housekeeper. Apparently, she was impressed by my honesty. The two women looked at each other and laughed, realizing their actions had set in motion events that would forever change both their lives and the company. What do we do now, Mrs. Brown? Isabella asked, barely concealing her nervousness. Tiffany took a deep breath. A determined smile formed on her lips. Isabella, I want you to join our company's executive team, Tiffany said, her voice gentle but firm. Isabella blinked, thinking she must have misheard. Tiffany continued. Your unique perspective, honesty, and ability to think on your feet under pressure are exactly what we need to move this company forward. Isabella felt her heart racing. Various emotions coursed through her, fear and disbelief among them. But Mrs. Brown, I have no management experience. I'm just a... Don't underestimate yourself, Isabella, Tiffany interrupted. Today, you saved this company. More importantly, you showed me a new path of leadership. Isabella fell silent for a moment, trying to process this offer. But what if I can't do it? She whispered her fear. You can do this, Isabella. I wouldn't suggest it if I wasn't certain. We'll take it one step at a time, and I'll be right beside you, Tiffany concluded. Over the next few days, Isabella found herself caught in a whirlwind of change. She accepted Tiffany's offer, and together they began implementing the promises of transparency and social responsibility. In every meeting, Isabella offered her unique perspective, challenging the status quo and proposing innovative solutions. There was resistance, of course, but Isabella's determination and Tiffany's unwavering support began transforming the company's culture. You're really changing this company, Isabella, Tiffany commented one day, watching Isabella give a presentation to investors. Isabella smiled, feeling a confidence she'd never imagined possible. We're changing it together, Mrs. Brown. As the company thrived under its new direction, Isabella's mother's health gradually improved, thanks to the treatment Tiffany had arranged. Isabella divided her time between her new corporate responsibilities and regular hospital visits. She felt joy and gratitude watching her mother's recovery. After one hospital visit, Isabella received a message from Tiffany. Emergency meeting. Come immediately. What now? I hope nothing's wrong, Isabella thought anxiously. But when she arrived at the office, instead of a crisis, a happy surprise awaited her. The conference room was decorated, and the entire management team, including Tiffany, waited with smiles. Isabella, Tiffany announced. Our first quarterly results since the transformation are in. Sales are up 30%, and we've been named one of the most ethical companies in the industry. The room erupted in applause, and Isabella felt tears of joy welling up in her eyes. She looked at Tiffany, no longer just her employer but a colleague and friend. We did it, Mrs. Brown, Isabella said, her voice thick with emotion. Tiffany smiled and placed a hand on Isabella's shoulder. Yes, we did. And from now on, please call me Tiffany. Over the following months, Isabella and Tiffany worked side by side. Each brought unique strengths to their partnership. Isabella maintained her empathy for employees at all levels, often walking the production floor to listen to their concerns. Tiffany never underestimated the value of Isabella's perspective, always seeking her advice on important decisions. Late one night, sharing coffee in the office, Tiffany laughed softly. You know, Isabella, I used to think your life was easier than mine. What a foolish thought that was. Isabella smiled in response. I thought the same about you, Tiffany. We've both learned so much. Looking out at the glittering city lights, Isabella reflected on their incredible journey. What had started as a simple idea had transformed not only their lives, but the lives of everyone around them. The company was thriving, her mother was regaining her health, and they had found an unexpected friendship and partnership. Who could have imagined, Isabella thought, that one day could lead to such tremendous change? Next to her, Tiffany smiled as if reading her thoughts. "Here's to change," Tiffany said, raising her cup. "And to the power of new perspectives." That night, as Isabella and Tiffany gazed down at the city from their office heights, they reflected on their remarkable journey. They had learned that every experience, whether good or bad, ultimately brings valuable lessons. And the empathy, understanding, and mutual respect they had cultivated had not only saved the company but built true leadership and an unexpected, lasting friendship. If you enjoyed this story, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to bring you exciting stories almost every day. Don't miss our next amazing tale. It will be appearing on your screen shortly. Thank you for watching this far. Please click the link displayed on your screen now. We have many valuable and entertaining stories specially selected for you. So, we'll see you there.